Ancient Greece is often painted as the cradle of democracy, philosophy, and legendary heroes. But what if everything you've been taught is just the surface of a far darker, stranger, and more mysterious world? Behind the marble statues and epic poems lies a civilization brimming with secrets so shocking they've been buried for centuries. Lost technologies more advanced than anything we imagined, rituals so terrifying they were sworn to silence, and scandals that could rewrite history itself. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 25 jaw-dropping revelations that will shatter your understanding of ancient Greece forever. Imagine a computer built 2,000 years before the Industrial Revolution. Picture sacred ceremonies where worshippers drank hallucinogenic brews to speak with the dead. Envision an entire city vanishing overnight, swallowed by the sea without a trace. These aren't myths, they're real, uncovered truths hidden in crumbling scrolls, sunken shipwrecks, and long-forgotten ruins. By the time this journey ends, you'll question everything you thought you knew about the ancient world. So brace yourself, history is about to get a lot more intriguing. Now let's turn our attention to something that defies everything we thought we knew about ancient technology. Hidden beneath the waves near the Greek island of Antikythera, a shipwreck from the 1st century before the Common Era held an artifact so advanced, it was initially mistaken for a piece of modern machinery. This was no ordinary relic, it was the Antikythera Mechanism, an intricate bronze device often called the world's first analog computer. When divers first pulled it from the wreck in 1901, its corroded fragments offered little hint of its true purpose. But decades later, painstaking analysis revealed something astonishing. This hand-sized device contained over 30 interlocking bronze gears, each precisely calibrated to track the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. It could predict lunar phases, eclipses, and even the dates of ancient athletic games like the Olympics. The level of precision was unmatched by anything else from its time or for the next 1,000 years. What makes this device truly mind-blowing is that it challenges our entire understanding of technological progress. According to conventional history, gears of this complexity didn't appear until the medieval clockmakers of Europe more than a millennium later. Yet here was proof that ancient Greek engineers had mastered mechanical astronomy long before we ever imagined. The mechanism even included a differential gear, a component thought to have been invented in the 17th century, proving these artisans were centuries, if not millennia, ahead of their time. But perhaps the most haunting question is this: who built it? Some scholars point to the legendary Archimedes, whose lost writings describe planetarium-like devices. Others suggest it was the work of a hidden school of engineers in Rhodes, where similar astronomical knowledge was flourishing. And then there's the chilling possibility that this wasn't a one-of-a-kind marvel, just the only one that survived. If such technology existed, how much more was lost to time? Modern reconstructions have unlocked its secrets, revealing a device so accurate it could chart celestial events with near-perfect precision. But what we still don't know is how this knowledge vanished, leaving no trace in the historical record until its accidental rediscovery. Was it deliberately suppressed, destroyed in wars or natural disasters, or simply forgotten as the world turned away from science in darker ages? The Antikythera Mechanism doesn't just rewrite history, it forces us to wonder what other revolutionary inventions from the ancient world still lie buried, waiting to be found. And this is just the beginning, because as we'll see next, the Greeks didn't just excel in technology, they also mastered the art of secrecy in ways that would shock even modern spies. But before we dive into those shadows, take a moment to consider, what if this mechanism was just the tip of an iceberg we've barely begun to uncover? But mysteries like these don't stay hidden forever. As we peel back the layers of time, the search for the Antikythera Mechanism's creator leads us to some of the greatest minds of antiquity. One name towers above the rest: Archimedes. known for his revolutionary inventions from siege engines to the famous Archimedes screw, this genius of Syracuse might have been behind the mechanism. Ancient texts describe him crafting a planetarium that mirrored celestial movements, eerily similar to our bronze artifact. But here's the twist: Archimedes died decades before the ship carrying the mechanism sank. Could it be his disciples preserved and advanced his designs, or was this the work of another brilliant mind entirely? Then there's Rhodes, a hub of astronomical research and engineering in the Hellenistic world. The island was home to renowned scholars like Hipparchus, whose star catalogues match the device's precision. Rhodes also had strong ties to the shipwreck's location, suggesting the mechanism might have been a prized export. Some researchers argue that such advanced technology couldn't have been an isolated invention. It hints at a lost tradition of craftsmanship, perhaps nurtured in workshops now forgotten by history. Yet the most unsettling question remains: why did this knowledge vanish? The mechanism's sophistication implies it wasn't alone. Imagine entire libraries filled with blueprints for devices just as advanced, lost when Rome burned Alexandria's great library or crumbled in earthquakes. Wars, shifting priorities toward philosophy over mechanics, or even deliberate suppression by elites fearing disruptive technology, any of these could have erased centuries of innovation. Modern reconstructions offer tantalizing clues. Using advanced imaging, scientists have decoded inscriptions and recreated the mechanism's inner workings. One replica, built with exacting detail, confirmed its ability to predict eclipses and planetary positions with jaw-dropping accuracy. But these models also reveal something startling: the design wasn't just functional, it was elegant, suggesting generations of refinement. If this was the peak of ancient engineering, how much further could they have gone? As we marvel at these reconstructions, let's not forget the bigger picture. The Antikythera Mechanism isn't just a relic, it's a ghost of a world that might have been. A world where the scientific revolution didn't wait for the Renaissance, where gears turned toward futures we can only imagine. And if this one device survived against all odds, what other wonders still lie buried, waiting to rewrite our past? But the Greeks' secrets weren't confined to machines. Next, we step into the shadows of a hidden cult where whispered vows and hallucinogenic brews promised initiates a glimpse beyond the veil of death itself. Now, let's journey from the precision of ancient machinery to the intoxicating allure of spiritual secrets. Hidden in the rolling hills near Athens, the Eleusinian mysteries promised something no invention could: a direct encounter with the divine. For over 1,000 years, this clandestine cult drew everyone from farmhands to emperors, all willing to risk punishment or even death for a single life-changing experience. But what exactly happened inside those torch-lit halls? The initiates took a vow of silence so absolute that even today we're piecing together fragments of the truth. The rituals revolved around the myth of Demeter and Persephone, a tale of loss, renewal, and the cycle of life. Initiates believed that by reenacting Persephone's descent into the underworld and triumphant return, they too could conquer death's fear. But this wasn't just storytelling. Ancient accounts hint at a potent brew called kykeon, a barley-based drink laced with ergot, a fungus with LSD-like properties. Sipped at a critical moment in the ceremony, it likely sent participants into vivid, hallucinatory trances, visions of the afterlife so real they left an indelible mark. One Roman philosopher, Cicero, claimed the rites gave initiates reasons to live joyfully and to die with better hope. The theatrics were equally chilling. Imagine descending into the Telesterion, a vast, windowless hall where shadows danced against frescoes of gods and monsters. Priestesses, clad in flowing robes, orchestrated a sensory overload, blinding flashes of light, eerie chants, and perhaps even staged encounters with spirits. The climax, a single ear of wheat silently harvested and displayed, symbolizing rebirth. Some scholars argue this simplicity was the real secret, the power of shock, awe, and a well-timed psychedelic to rewrite a person's understanding of mortality. But why such extreme secrecy? Breaking the vow meant execution, as the playwright Aeschylus nearly discovered when he was accused of revealing details on stage. The penalties suggest the cult guarded more than rituals, it protected a psychological weapon. In a world without modern science, controlling access to the afterlife gave Eleusis immense political and social leverage. Emperors like Hadrian and Marcus Aurelius journeyed there, not just for wisdom, but to legitimize their rule by association with the divine. Modern excavations have unearthed traces of the Kykeans' ingredients and the Telesterians' acoustics, designed to amplify whispers into ghostly echoes. Yet the full experience remains just out of reach, like a dream half remembered. What's clear is that the mysteries didn't just offer spiritual comfort. They hacked the human mind, using chemistry and psychology centuries before we had words for either. And that raises a haunting question. In our age of clinical therapy and synthetic drugs, have we really outgrown the allure of ancient ecstasy? But the Greek secrets weren't all ethereal. Next, we descend into the brutal reality of Sparta's shadow army, where teenage boys became weapons in a silent war of terror. While the Eleusinian mysteries explored the boundaries of the mind, Sparta's secrets were written in blood. Behind the legendary discipline of its warriors lay a far darker institution, the Crypteia, a shadowy operation that turned Spartan boys into instruments of state terror. Imagine a society where your final rite of passage wasn't just surviving harsh training, but hunting fellow human beings like prey. Every autumn, the Spartan elite selected their most promising young men, often just 18 years old, and sent them into the countryside armed only with daggers. Their mission: to cull the Helot population, the enslaved Greeks who outnumbered Spartan citizens nearly 10 to 1. By day, these boys blended into the wilderness, hiding like wolves. By night, they struck without warning, targeting the strongest Helots, those who might inspire rebellion. Ancient historian Plutarch chillingly described it as a rite of endurance, where killing wasn't just allowed but required for graduation into full Spartan citizenship. The brutality was calculated. Sparta's entire economy rested on Helot labor, yet their rulers lived in constant fear of revolt. The Crypteia wasn't just military training, it was psychological warfare. By keeping the Helots traumatized and isolated, Sparta ensured control without needing fortress walls. Some sources even suggest the boys staged grotesque displays, leaving bodies in public spaces as a warning. And because victims were chosen arbitrarily, not for crimes, but simply for their strength or influence, no Helot ever felt safe. Archaeology confirms this wasn't mere propaganda. Mass graves near Sparta contained skeletons with blade marks matching Spartan short swords, many buried hastily without rites. Even more telling, the absence of young adult male Helots in these pits, implying targeted removals of potential leaders. Modern historians debate whether the Crypteia operated annually or only during unrest, but its impact was undeniable. The terror worked so well that Sparta, despite its small citizen population, avoided major slave revolts for centuries, unlike Athens or Rome. What's most unsettling is how the Crypteia warped morality. Spartans revered these killings as sacred duty, twisting virtues like courage into something monstrous. Boys returned from their missions celebrated, not questioned. The philosopher Aristotle later condemned it as a system that made tyrants of young men, yet Sparta's legend as a utopia of warriors persisted. Hollywood's shiny portrayals never show this. The Crypteia proves Sparta's strength relied not just on discipline, but on institutionalized horror. But the story doesn't end with the blades. Next, we'll unearth how this secret police force was just one thread in Sparta's web of control. A system so ruthless it reshaped an entire civilization. The romanticized image of Sparta as a noble warrior society hides a much darker truth beneath its gleaming armor. While Hollywood paints Spartans as heroic freedom fighters, archaeology tells a different story. one of systematic oppression and calculated brutality that fueled their entire way of life. The Helots weren't just slaves, they were the backbone of Sparta's economy, farming the land so citizens could focus on war. But this dependence created a paradox. The Spartans, outnumbered and paranoid, built their society on terror to maintain control. The annual Crypteia killings were just one tool in a vast machinery of oppression. Helots faced public beatings for any show of confidence, forced drunkenness to be mocked at feasts, and even staged revolts where young Spartans practiced slaughtering them en masse. Ancient writers like Thucydides noted that Spartans would declare war on Helots formally each year, so murdering them carried no religious guilt. Archaeology strips away any doubt about this brutality. Near modern-day Sparta, excavations reveal mass graves filled with skeletons bearing the signature wounds of Spartan weapons, short swords driven upward into the ribs, the classic killing stroke they drilled into boys. Forensic analysis shows many victims were in their prime, strong enough to threaten the system. Unlike Athenian slaves who could sometimes buy freedom, Helots had no escape. Even their clothing was mandated animal skins to mark their subhuman status. The psychological warfare went deeper. Spartan boys were taken from their families at age 7 to endure the agoge, a training system designed to break all individuality. But while they suffered, they were taught to see Helots as lesser beings. Ritualized theft encouraged stealing from Helots not for survival, but to prove cunning. If caught, the punishment wasn't for theft but for failure. This conditioning created generations who viewed oppression as natural. Contrast this with the Hollywood myth. Films like 300 show Spartans as defenders of Greek freedom, but historical Sparta allied with Persia against other Greeks when it suited them. Their legendary stand at Thermopylae wasn't about liberty, it was about protecting a slave state. Even Sparta's famed women's rights existed only to produce more soldiers. Wives were shared between brothers to ensure strong offspring. The most chilling evidence comes from pottery. While Athenian art celebrated democracy and philosophy, Spartan ceramics glorified violence. Scenes of youths chasing Helots like animals or warriors grinding enemies underfoot. This wasn't art, it was propaganda, reinforcing the hierarchy daily. Modern laser scans on Spartan soil also show eerie gaps in settlement patterns, suggesting Helot villages were intentionally kept isolated to prevent organization. By the time Rome rose, Sparta was a hollow relic. Their system worked too well, the constant fear of revolt stifled innovation, and without Helot labor, their economy collapsed. The perfect warriors became tourist attractions, performing archaic drills for visitors. The graves, however, remain, silent testament to a society that chose terror over progress, and in doing so sealed its own fate. Behind the legend lies a warning, one that echoes wherever strength is built on the backs of the oppressed. Next, we'll dive into a mystery that baffled even the Spartans, the sudden disappearance of an entire Greek city swallowed by the earth. Now, shifting our gaze from Sparta's brutal regime, let's uncover a mystery that left even the ancients terrified: the sudden and complete disappearance of Helike, a thriving Greek city erased in a single night. Imagine a bustling metropolis, rich from trade and culture, vanishing without warning. That's exactly what happened in the winter of 373 BC, when Helike was swallowed by the earth and sea in a catastrophe so shocking, it became a cautionary tale for centuries. Helike wasn't just any city. Located on the Gulf of Corinth, it was a major hub of the Achaean League, famous for its worship of Poseidon. The god of earthquakes, ironically, was their patron. Ancient writers like Strabo tell us Helike was wealthy, with grand temples and a busy port. But on that fateful night, everything changed. Witnesses reported strange omens, masses of animals fleeing inland days before, and eerie lights in the sky. Then the earth convulsed. A massive earthquake struck, followed by a tsunami that drowned the city as the coastline collapsed. By dawn, Helike was gone, submerged beneath the waves. The few survivors found nothing but water where their homes once stood. For centuries, Helike became a legend. Ancient tourists would sail over the ruins, claiming to see statues still standing underwater. But as time passed, its exact location faded into myth. Scholars debated whether it was pure folklore until modern technology cracked the case. In the 1980s, archaeologists began scanning the seafloor near the Gulf of Corinth. Using magnetic sensors and sonar, they detected strange shapes under layers of silt. Dives revealed pottery, walls, and even cobblestone streets, all preserved in a watery grave. The tsunami had buried the city so quickly, artifacts were frozen in time. The most chilling find, a row of Hellenistic columns toppled in the same direction by the quake's force. Nearby, bronze coins dated to just before the disaster, some still stacked as if abandoned mid-trade. But here's the twist: Helike's ruins aren't deep underwater. They lie just offshore, under a few meters of sediment, hidden in plain sight. Geologists now believe the entire coastline sank during the quake, dropping the city below sea level instantly. What makes Helike so haunting isn't just its destruction, it's the parallels to modern risks. The Gulf of Corinth sits on a tectonic time bomb where Africa's plate grinds against Europe. Scientists warn a similar disaster could strike again. Meanwhile, Helike's ruins offer a grim snapshot of ancient life interrupted. Clay tablets recovered from the site show mundane records, taxes, shipments naively unaware they'd be humanity's last glimpse of a lost world. The rediscovery of Helike reshapes our understanding of Greek history. It proves how quickly nature can rewrite human achievements and how even the mightiest cities are fragile. Next time you hear about earthquake preparedness, remember Helike, a civilization that vanished between sunset and sunrise, leaving only whispers beneath the waves. And speaking of whispers, our next secret takes us to the heart of ancient warfare, where flames could dance on water. Stay tuned for the mystery of Greek fire. Now let's turn from the silent ruins of Helike to a weapon so fearsome. Its very name struck terror into the hearts of enemies, the legendary Greek fire. But what few realize is that this Byzantine superweapon may have had its roots in earlier Greek experiments with chemistry and warfare. Picture this: flames that cling to water, burning ships to ashes while defying every attempt to extinguish them. A weapon so potent, its formula was guarded like a state secret, passed down only through whispers between emperors and their most trusted alchemists. The Byzantines called it liquid fire, but its origins might stretch back to the ingenious minds of ancient Greek chemists. Historical accounts hint at earlier versions of incendiary weapons used by the Greeks, long before the Byzantine Empire perfected its infamous recipe. Imagine a substance that could be sprayed from tubes or lobbed in clay pots, igniting upon impact and creating an inferno no water could quench, the key ingredient. Likely a volatile mix of quicklime, petroleum, and pine resin materials the Greeks had access to and experimented with for centuries. Quicklime, for instance, reacts violently with water, generating intense heat, while petroleum, scooped from natural surface wells in the eastern Mediterranean, would have provided the unquenchable fuel. What made this weapon revolutionary wasn't just its destructive power, but its psychological impact. Enemy sailors, seeing flames race across the waves toward them, often abandoned ship in sheer panic. The Byzantines deployed it with devastating effect during naval battles, particularly against Arab fleets besieging Constantinople. One historical account describes how Emperor Leo III's forces used it to annihilate an entire invading armada in 717 AD, the fire turning the sea itself into a blazing trap. Yet here's the mystery: despite its strategic importance, the full formula was never written down, at least not in any surviving texts. Emperors feared its secrets falling into enemy hands, so knowledge of its production was restricted to a select few. Even the exact delivery system, often depicted as bronze tubes mounted on ships, remains speculative. Some historians believe the Greeks may have pioneered early versions of these mechanisms, using pressurized siphons to project the fiery stream. Byzantine engineers later refined the design, but the core concept could have been inherited from earlier Greek innovations. Modern scientists have tried to reverse engineer Greek fire with mixed results. The closest match, a napalm-like substance that adheres to surfaces while burning at extreme temperatures. But without the original instructions, we can only guess at the precise blend. What's clear is that this wasn't just crude arson, it was chemistry weaponized with terrifying precision. The Greeks, with their deep understanding of natural elements, likely laid the groundwork for a tool that would dominate medieval warfare. The legacy of Greek fire endures not just in history books, but in modern warfare's flamethrowers and incendiary devices. It's a reminder that the ancient world's technological prowess was far more advanced than we often assume. And while the Byzantine Empire gets credit for perfecting it, the spark of its invention may have flickered first in the workshops of Greek alchemists centuries earlier. As we leave the blazing seas behind, our next secret plunges us into the heart of divine mystery where the very air could induce visions. Stay tuned as we explore the Oracle of Delphi's hidden gas chamber and the science behind her prophetic trances. Shifting from the fiery terrors of the ancient world, we step into the realm of the divine, where the very earth itself seemed to speak. High on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, the Oracle of Delphi sat atop a fissure in the earth, breathing in vapors that sent her into prophetic frenzies. For centuries, historians assumed these visions were pure theater or divine inspiration. But modern science has unearthed a startling truth: the priestess might have been high on geological gases. The Temple of Apollo at Delphi was more than a religious site. It was a carefully engineered chamber of intoxication. Ancient accounts describe the Pythia, the oracle's priestess, seated on a tripod over a chasm, inhaling strange fumes before uttering cryptic prophecies. Plutarch, who served as a priest at Delphi, noted her trances included convulsions, foaming at the mouth, and a voice that didn't sound human. For years, scholars dismissed this as myth, until geologists discovered two fault lines intersecting directly beneath the temple, seeping ethylene gas. Ethylene is a sweet-smelling hydrocarbon that, in low doses, induces euphoria, trance-like states, and even hallucinations. Crucially, it's also lighter than air, meaning it would have risen naturally through the temple's stone floor, concentrating around the Pythia's seat. Experiments with similar gas concentrations show startling parallels to her described behavior: disorientation, altered speech, and a detached, otherworldly demeanor. The priestess wasn't faking, she was chemically altered, her prophecies shaped by the very geology beneath her feet. What's even more fascinating is how the temple's design amplified this effect. The Aditon, the oracle's inner chamber, was built like a sealed vault with limited ventilation, allowing gases to accumulate. Recent excavations found traces of spring water channels running beneath it, which would have interacted with the limestone bedrock to release more fumes. The ancient Greeks, unaware of chemistry as we know it, likely interpreted these phenomena as Apollo's breath, divine power made tangible. The revelations don't stop there. Archaeologists have identified chewed laurel leaves in the temple's drains, hinting at another layer of intoxication. Laurel contains cyanogenic compounds that, when combined with ethylene, could have deepened the Pythia's trance. This wasn't random drug delirium, it was a calibrated ritual, honed over generations to produce consistent, controllable visions. The priests may not have understood the science, but they mastered the delivery system. Yet here's the twist: not all oracles experience the same intensity. Plutarch noted that some Pythias died young, possibly from prolonged gas exposure, while others gave clearer prophecies during winter when gas emissions were weaker. This variability explains why some of Delphi's predictions were eerily accurate, like warning Athens of the Persian invasion, while others were bafflingly vague. The gas didn't just induce visions, it dictated their clarity. Modern attempts to replicate the chamber's conditions confirm the theory. When exposed to ethylene, subjects report out-of-body sensations and heightened emotional states, describing visions with uncanny similarity to ancient accounts. It's a rare case where mythology and geology collide, proving that the Greeks didn't just imagine their gods, they literally breathed them in. Delphi's secret wasn't just spiritual, it was scientific. The oracle's power came not from Apollo alone, but from the Earth's hidden chemistry, harnessed by priests who turned geological accident into divine theater. As we pull back from the vaporous chamber, our next mystery takes us from the sacred to the scandalous, where luxury knew no bounds and excess became a way of life. Stay tuned as we uncover the outrageous indulgences of the Sybarites, a people so devoted to pleasure, their name became synonymous with decadence. From divine intoxication to the ultimate royal disappearance, our journey through ancient secrets now leads us to a mystery that has baffled historians for centuries. The final resting place of Alexander the Great, one of history's most legendary conquerors, has vanished without a trace, and the story behind this disappearance is as dramatic as the man himself. After his death in Babylon in 323 BC, Alexander's body became a political prize fought over by his generals. Ptolemy, who seized control of Egypt, hijacked the funeral procession transporting Alexander's golden sarcophagus to Macedonia, diverting it to Memphis before eventually moving it to Alexandria. There, in a grand mausoleum at the heart of the city, Alexander lay in state for centuries, visited by emperors like Julius Caesar and Augustus, who reportedly broke off pieces of his nose while paying respects. Roman Emperor Septimius Severus even sealed the tomb to stop relic hunters, but by late antiquity, the entire structure had mysteriously disappeared. What makes this disappearance so puzzling is that we have multiple accounts confirming the tomb's location in Alexandria right up until the 4th century AD. Early Christian writers mention it being shown to visitors, while Muslim historians after the Arab conquest describe a magnificent burial site that later vanished. The leading theory suggests earthquakes or tsunamis common in Alexandria may have submerged the tomb, but no definitive underwater ruins have been found. Another possibility is that Christian authorities, offended by pagan veneration of Alexander, quietly destroyed or repurposed his mausoleum. Modern searches have been tantalizing but inconclusive. In 2014, a team in Alexandria claimed to have found a massive royal tomb beneath the modern city, complete with a statue resembling Alexander, but no sarcophagus was recovered. Another theory places his remains in the oasis of Siwa, where he famously consulted the oracle of Ammon, who supposedly confirmed his divine status. Local legends there speak of a hidden underground chamber, but excavations have yet to prove anything. The intrigue deepens when we consider what was lost with the tomb. Ancient sources describe Alexander's sarcophagus as solid gold, his body preserved in honey, wearing armor and royal insignia. Some accounts even mention a priceless manuscript, his supposed last plans, buried with him. If found, the tomb could rewrite our understanding of his empire's collapse and the wars that followed his death. Yet the greatest irony is that a man who conquered from Greece to India, whose name echoes through history, now lies in an unmarked grave, his physical legacy erased while his legend only grows. As we step away from this unsolved riddle, our next secret takes us from lost tombs to living luxuries, where an entire city turned pleasure into an art form. The Sybarites didn't just enjoy life, they reinvented excess, and their indulgences would make even modern billionaires blush. But let's shift gears from vanished tombs to an invention so ahead of its time, it feels almost modern. Hidden in the pages of history lies a device that might just be the world's first vending machine, dreamed up not by a 19th century industrialist, but by a brilliant Greek engineer in the 1st century AD. Meet Hero of Alexandria, a man whose genius rivaled even Da Vinci's. While most remember him for pioneering early steam engines, one of his lesser-known marvels was a coin-operated dispenser designed for temples. Imagine walking into an ancient Greek shrine, dropping a drachma into a slot, and receiving a measured amount of holy water, all without a priest in sight. This wasn't just convenience, it was a stroke of technological audacity. The mechanism was deceptively simple yet ingenious. A coin dropped into the top would land on a balanced lever, tilting it downward. This action would temporarily open a valve, allowing liquid to flow from a hidden reservoir. As the coin slid off the lever, its weight no longer holding the valve open, the mechanism reset, stopping the flow precisely. Hero's design even included a counterweight system to ensure consistency, so no devotee could cheat the temple by using lighter counterfeit coins. What's fascinating is how this invention reflects the everyday realities of ancient life. Temples often charged small fees for sacred rites, and human attendants could be bribed or inconsistent. Hero's machine eliminated corruption while blending commerce with spirituality, an early example of automation serving both practicality and ritual. Modern reconstructions prove it worked flawlessly, a testament to Greek engineering precision. Yet here's the twist: this technology vanished for centuries. While Roman bathhouses later used similar coin-operated locks for storage, the full concept of vending machines wouldn't reappear until the Industrial Revolution. Some speculate that without widespread need or patent systems, such inventions were seen as novelties rather than breakthroughs. Others believe many of Hero's manuscripts were lost when the Library of Alexandria burned, leaving later generations to reinvent his wheel. Today, Hero's legacy hides in plain sight. Next time you buy a soda from a machine, remember, the brain behind that convenience lived 2,000 years ago in a world without electricity, where water flowed not by pumps but by sheer cleverness. And as we marvel at this ancient ingenuity, our next secret plunges us into the labyrinth of Knossos, where the line between myth and history blurs in corridors that may have held a very different truth. Now, let's unravel one of history's most enduring puzzles, the legendary labyrinth of Knossos. Far from the monster-filled maze of myth, this sprawling Bronze Age palace reveals a far more practical truth beneath its twisting corridors. Archaeologists have spent decades piecing together clues that suggest the labyrinth wasn't built to imprison a half-bull beast, but to streamline the bureaucracy of one of Europe's first advanced civilizations. Picture this: a vast complex with over 1,000 interlocking rooms, staircases that lead to nowhere, and doorways placed at odd angles. To early explorers, it seemed like a deliberate maze designed to confuse. But modern research paints a different story. The so-called labyrinth was actually the nerve center of Minoan Crete, a carefully organized hub where scribes tracked shipments of olive oil, wine, and precious metals using still undeciphered scripts. Those bewildering passageways, they weren't meant to trap anyone, they were traffic control systems, separating sacred spaces from bustling workshops and storerooms. Take the palace's distinctive pillar crypts. These windowless basement chambers were once thought to be lairs for mythical creatures. Yet residue analysis shows they held giant pithoi jars stuffed with grain and oil, likely taxed goods collected from nearby farms. The pillars themselves bear inscriptions tracking quantities, suggesting they functioned like ancient spreadsheets. Even the famous throne room, with its griffin frescoes, wasn't a royal seat but possibly a judicial chamber where disputes over trade contracts were settled. Then there's the matter of the double-axis labyrinths carved everywhere. Greek storytellers later spun these as weapons used to slay the Minotaur. In reality, they were probably ritual symbols marking administrative zones. Archaeologists found clusters of identical axes near archival rooms filled with clay tablets, implying they denoted areas where contracts or inventories were stored. The palace's layout even follows a deliberate logic. Quarters closest to the central courtyard handled high-status goods like perfumes and ivory, while peripheral areas processed raw materials. Why did the myth take hold? Blame the Mycenaeans. When they conquered Crete around 1450 BC, they encountered this alien architectural style and likely misinterpreted its purpose. Over centuries, tales grew of a subterranean maze built by King Minos to hide his wife's monstrous offspring. The story stuck, eclipsing the palace's true role as a revolutionary urban planner's masterpiece. Recent laser scans reveal another surprise. The labyrinth expanded outward in concentric rings, mirroring the island's trade networks. Rooms align with solar events, not to worship the sun, but to time agricultural shipments. Even the iconic bull-leaping frescoes may depict not just sport, but ceremonies marking the renewal of commercial treaties. So next time you hear of Theseus and the Minotaur, remember, the real monster was probably paperwork. And as we leave the labyrinth's shadowy corridors, our next secret plunges into the veiled world of Pythagorean cults, where numbers held divine power and a mathematical discovery could cost you your life. Moving from the labyrinth's hidden bureaucracy to the shadows of ancient academia, we uncover the enigmatic world of Pythagoras and his secretive cult. Far more than just the triangle theorem guy, Pythagoras led a bizarre brotherhood where numbers were gods, beans were forbidden, and mathematics could get you killed. Imagine a cloistered community in 6th century BC Croton, where initiates swore blood oaths of silence and lived by 500 strict rules. Members weren't just mathematicians, they were radical vegetarians who believed eating beans trapped souls, avoided walking on public roads to prevent spiritual pollution, and worshipped numerical relationships as divine revelations. The cult's inner circle, called mathematikoi, wore white linen, practiced eerie daily rituals like chanting to the number 36, and interpreted cosmic harmonies through musical intervals and geometric shapes. Their greatest heresy, the discovery of irrational numbers, when one member, Hippasus, proved that the square root of 2 couldn't be expressed as a fraction, he shattered the Pythagorean doctrine that all reality could be reduced to whole number ratios. Ancient sources whisper that the Brotherhood reacted with horror. Some claim they drowned Hippasus at sea for revealing this blasphemous truth. Whether myth or history, the message was clear. In Pythagoras's world, math wasn't just calculation. It was a sacred mystery that could upend the cosmos. What made their number worship so dangerous? Unlike today's dry equations, Pythagorean math was mystical alchemy. They saw odd numbers as masculine, evens as feminine, and the number 10 as holy because it formed a perfect triangle. Even their vegetarianism stemmed from numerology. Beans were taboo due to their phallic shape and perceived link to the underworld. Reality itself was structured through numerical patterns. The discovery of irrational numbers threatened this entire worldview, implying chaos lurked within their perfect numerical order. The cult's downfall came not from mathematical scandals but politics. When Pythagoreans took over Croton's government, their extremist rules banning laughter in public, enforcing bean-free diets on citizens sparked rebellion. An angry mob burned their compound, killing many followers, yet their coded legacy endured. Plato later borrowed their ideas, Christian theologians adapted their numerical mysticism, and even today we unknowingly invoke them when calling math universal truth. As we step away from this numerical underworld, our next revelation plunges into the volcanic fury of Thera, an eruption so catastrophic it may have inspired the myth of Atlantis itself. Now, shifting our gaze from the secretive world of Pythagorean cults, we arrive at one of the Mediterranean's most explosive mysteries, the catastrophic eruption of Thera. Around 1600 BC, this volcanic island, now known as Santorini, unleashed a fury so immense it reshaped history, yet strangely vanished from Greek memory for centuries. The scale of this disaster is almost unimaginable. Thera's eruption was 4 times more powerful than Krakatoa, sending tsunamis towering over 100 feet high that obliterated coastal cities across the Aegean. Ash blotted out the sun for weeks, and the resulting climate upheaval may have triggered famines as far away as China. So why don't ancient Greek texts mention this apocalyptic event? The answer lies in what archaeologists call a cultural blackout. The Minoan civilization, which dominated the Aegean at the time, was decimated by Thera's fallout. Their vibrant palaces on Crete, like Knossos, were either swallowed by tsunamis or choked under volcanic ash. Survivors who fled inland were soon conquered by Mycenaean Greeks, who systematically erased Minoan history to legitimize their own rule. For generations, the disaster lived only in garbled folk memories until Egyptian records gave us the key. Astonishingly, the best account comes from the temple walls of Ahmose I, a pharaoh who reigned during Thera's eruption. Egyptian scribes documented bizarre weather, blood-red skies, incessant storms, and a great noise in the sky matching volcanic descriptions. They even recorded tsunami damage along the Nile Delta, hundreds of miles from Thera. These details align perfectly with modern geologic evidence, including ice core samples from Greenland that show global sulfur spikes from Thera's eruption. This brings us to Plato's Atlantis. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC, Plato describes an advanced island kingdom that angered the gods and sank beneath the waves in a single day and night. The parallels are uncanny. Atlantis was said to have concentric harbor rings exactly like Thera's pre-eruption caldera. Plato placed the disaster 9,000 years before his time, but scholars now suspect this was a translation error from Egyptian records, where the symbol for 100 was misread as 1,000. Could Atlantis be Thera's ghost rising from the ashes of cultural amnesia? Recent excavations add fuel to this theory. On the island of Crete, archaeologists found Minoan buildings with walls knocked inward consistent with tsunami impact and layers of volcanic pumice embedded in the soil. Even more telling, Thera's eruption coincides with the sudden decline of Minoan influence, replaced by Mycenaean warlords who likely exploited the chaos. The Thera eruption wasn't just a natural disaster. It was a historical vanishing act, so traumatic that survivors buried its memory until foreign records and modern science pieced the truth together. As we leave this lost chapter of fire and forgetting, our next discovery takes us to the fragmented verses of history's most controversial poetess Sappho. Only a fraction of her passionate words survive, but what remains has sparked debates for millennia. Turning now to the realm of poetry and passion, we encounter the enigmatic legacy of Sappho, whose voice once echoed across the Aegean but now survives only in fragments. Of the 9 volumes she composed, a mere 10% remain scattered lines preserved by chance in quotations from other ancient writers or painstakingly recovered from crumbling papyrus. Yet even these remnants reveal why she was hailed as the 10th muse, her words pulsing with an intimacy and intensity that still feels startlingly modern. The mystery of Sappho's lost verses took a dramatic turn in recent decades when archaeologists uncovered charred papyrus scrolls in Egypt's Oxyrhynchus dump. These fragile relics, carbonized by time and fire, held hidden treasures. Using multispectral imaging, scholars peeled back layers of damage to reveal previously unknown lines of her poetry. One recovered fragment speaks of longing so fierce it burns the flesh, while another paints a moonlit tryst between 2 women with vivid, unapologetic sensuality. These discoveries confirm what ancient critics hinted at, that Sappho's full oeuvre was far more daring than the sanitized versions passed down through medieval monks. What makes these recoveries extraordinary is how they challenge centuries of censorship. After Christianity took hold, Sappho's work was systematically purged for its explicit celebrations of same-sex love. Byzantine scholars literally scrubbed her poems from parchment to reuse the expensive material, leaving only palimpsest's ghostly traces beneath religious texts. Even the fragments that survived were often altered. Victorian translators, scandalized by her passion, routinely changed feminine pronouns to masculine or inserted references to male lovers. One 19th century edition went so far as to claim Sappho's lyrics were addressed to her students, framing her as a chaste schoolmistress rather than a woman unafraid to hymn desire between women. Yet the truth persists in the cracks of history. A papyrus now in Cologne University's collection contains the poem Ode to Aphrodite, where Sappho begs the goddess to unite her with a resistant lover. The original Greek leaves no ambiguity: the beloved is female, and Sappho's anguish is palpably erotic. Equally revealing are ancient parodies of her work. Athenian comedians mocked her lyrics precisely because they celebrated relationships that mainstream society found transgressive. The hunt for Sappho's lost verses continues today. In 2014, researchers identified 2 new fragments in a private collector's mummy cartonnage, the recycled papyrus used to make funeral masks. One contains a previously unknown poem about aging, its melancholy cadences showing a side of Sappho rarely seen. Meanwhile, the Vatican Library guards a controversial manuscript known as the Sappho Codex, rumored to hold dozens of uncensored poems. Access remains restricted, but infrared scans suggest it could rewrite our understanding of ancient love poetry. As we piece together these fragments, a portrait emerges of a woman who defied her era's constraints. Sappho didn't merely write about love, she gave voice to its rawest, most inconvenient truths, from jealousy to ecstasy. That her words still resonate today, despite every effort to erase them, is testament to their power. And with each new discovery, we come closer to hearing her song in full. Next, we journey to the whispering oak groves of Dodona, where priestesses decoded the divine in rustling leaves and bronze echoes, an oracle far older and perhaps wiser than Delphi. Now let's untangle one of history's most persistent literary controversies: the deliberate rewriting of Sappho's legacy to conform to later moral standards. The question of whether Sappho's poetry reflects her personal experiences or cultural norms has sparked debate for centuries, but what's undeniable is the systematic effort to obscure her celebration of love between women. Consider the case of the Ode to Aphrodite, her most complete surviving poem. Modern translations faithfully render lines where Sappho begs the goddess to sway a reluctant female lover, using the Greek word nu alpha upsilonita, a feminine form meaning young woman. Yet in 1858, translator John Addington Symonds discreetly changed these pronouns to masculine, insisting Sappho addressed men despite all textual evidence. His preface claimed ancient Greek lacked proper words for female desire, a transparent falsehood given Sappho's precise vocabulary. Even more brazen was Ambrose Phillips' 1715 version, which inserted an entirely fictional male suitor named Phaon, a mythic ferryman borrowed from other poets' works, to explain her passion as heterosexual longing. This censorship wasn't accidental, it followed a clear pattern. Medieval scribes preserving Sappho's work often added marginal notes labeling her lyrics as teaching tools for bridal choruses, framing them as instructional rather than autobiographical. By the Victorian era, scholars like Henry Thornton Wharton argued her poems depicted platonic friendships, despite ancient accounts describing her circle as a thiosos, a ritualized group of women bonded by emotional and possibly physical intimacy. The most telling proof of deliberate suppression comes from Oxyrhynchus Papyrus number 123, where a 3rd century copyist selectively erased feminine pronouns, leaving gaps in the parchment rather than transcribing Sappho's original words. Historical context makes these alterations particularly ironic. Contemporary vase paintings and plays confirm 7th century Lesbos tolerated same-sex relationships among women, with artifacts showing female couples exchanging gifts and vows. Athenian comedies like Aristophanes' The Smophorias mocked Sappho not for having female lovers, but for taking too many proof her inclinations were widely known and accepted as fact in antiquity. Even the term lesbian underwent deliberate distortion. Derived from Lesbos, it originally meant any resident of the island until 19th century. Sexologists co-opted it while denying its connection to Sappho's documented passions. The stakes of this debate extend beyond academic correctness. Each altered pronoun erases a thread in humanity's tapestry of diverse lived experiences. When a 2016 discovery of Sappho's brother's poem revealed her writing about familial bonds, some scholars oddly seized on it to prove she prioritized traditional values, ignoring that the same papyrus fragment also contained unabashed love poetry to women. This selective reading persists today, with online translations still correcting her pronouns unless specifically sought out in feminist editions. Yet resistance flickers through history too. The Byzantine Encyclopedia Suda, compiled around the year 1000, matter-of-factly called Sappho, a woman lover of women without scandal. Renaissance scholars like Antikythera restored feminine pronouns in their editions, only to have later printers revert to censorship. Modern archaeology continues to peel back layers of deception, as with the 2014 recovery of a papyrus where Sappho calls a woman sweeter than golden apples, a line previously known only from male poets quoting it derisively. What emerges is a clear case of historical gaslighting. Centuries of authorities insisting Sappho couldn't have meant what she plainly wrote. The tragedy isn't just lost poetry, but the erasure of an entire spectrum of ancient lived reality. As we move forward, remember that every translation is a choice, and today's scholars increasingly choose honesty, letting Sappho's voice ring true at last. Our next revelation takes us to the sacred grove of Dodona, where priestesses interpreted the language of rustling leaves and bronze gongs to reveal the will of the gods. Turning now to the whispers of the sacred oaks, we uncover the mysteries of Dodona, where nature itself spoke the will of the gods. While Delphi's oracle often steals the spotlight, Dodona's ancient grove held equal significance, offering divine guidance through the rustling leaves of towering oak trees and the resonant tones of bronze gongs. This lesser-known sanctuary in northwestern Greece served as one of the oldest Hellenic oracle sites, dating back to at least the 2nd millennium before the Common Era, possibly even predating Zeus worship in the region. What made Dodona unique was its raw, organic method of divination. Unlike Delphi's priestess breathing volcanic fumes, Dodona's 3 priestesses, known as the Peleiades or doves, interpreted messages directly from the natural world. They listened intently to the sounds of the sacred grove, deciphering prophecies in the wind's movement through the oak leaves and the rhythmic strikes of hanging bronze vessels. Historical accounts describe how seekers would inscribe their questions on lead tablets, many of which survive today, asking everything from agricultural advice to military strategy. One particularly striking example reads, "To Zeus, Naos and Dione, should I move to Sicily for trade?" The reply, etched centuries ago, still echoes through the ages, "Stay. The land here will prosper." Archaeology reveals the grove's startling sophistication. Excavations show the oak stood within a circular stone enclosure, with bronze gongs arranged to amplify specific sound frequencies when struck by attendants. These acoustics weren't random. Recent experiments demonstrate how certain gong tones could create harmonic vibrations that altered listeners' brainwave patterns, potentially inducing trance-like states. The priestesses likely combined these auditory cues with the visual patterns of swirling leaves, creating a multisensory experience that heightened their intuitive interpretations. Dodona's influence extended far beyond its forest clearing. Homer's Iliad references it as Zeus's primary oracle, and Herodotus recounts how Egyptian priests recognized Dodona as the oldest prophetic site in the Greek world. Its reputation drew visitors from across the Mediterranean, including mythological figures like Jason and the Argonauts, who allegedly consulted the oaks before embarking on their quest for the Golden Fleece. Even in practical matters, the oracle held sway. During the Peloponnesian War, Spartan commanders reportedly postponed battles based on Dodona's warnings of unfavorable winds. The decline of Dodona's prominence around the 3rd century before the Common Era highlights a fascinating shift in Greek spirituality. As urban centers grew, people increasingly favored oracles that delivered clear, verbal prophecies over Dodona's ambiguous natural sign. Yet the grove's legacy persists in unexpected ways. Modern linguists note that the Greek word for oak, drus, shares its root with Druids, Celtic priests who similarly revered sacred trees. This linguistic thread suggests Dodona's practices may have influenced spiritual traditions across Europe. Perhaps most compelling are the surviving lead tablets that show ordinary people's raw hopes and fears. One heart-wrenching query asks whether a missing son still lives. Another confesses to stealing a cloak and seeks absolution. These artifacts remind us that beyond the grand myths, Dodona served as an intimate bridge between the divine and the daily struggles of ancient life. The next time you hear leaves rustling in the wind, listen closely. You might just catch an echo of the Peleiades' ancient wisdom carried across millennia. Our journey through Greece's hidden past continues as we examine an astonishing collection of ancient machines, devices so advanced they challenge everything we thought we knew about classical technology. Now, let's step into a world where the past meets the future in the most unexpected way. While we often picture ancient Greece through marble statues and olive groves, hidden within their history lies a revelation that will reshape your understanding of their ingenuity. The astonishing world of ancient Greek robots. Long before the age of circuits and silicon, master inventors like Hero of Alexandria were crafting machines that mimicked life itself. Imagine walking into a grand theater in the 1st century before the Common Era, where wooden figures moved with eerie precision, performing entire plays without a single human actor. These automated theaters, described in Hero's manuscripts, were powered by intricate systems of ropes, weights, and rotating drums, early prototypes of programmatic machinery. One account details a mechanical play about the god Dionysus, where tiny automated ships sailed across a stage, triggered storms with sound effects, and even had wooden figures pour wine, all without human intervention. But the spectacle didn't stop at entertainment. In the homes of wealthy Greeks, mechanical servants were more than myth. Philo of Byzantium documented a life-sized automaton, a maid who could pour wine when a cup was placed in her hand. This marvel relied on a hidden network of tubes and levers, with liquid flowing from a reservoir in her body. Even more striking, some designs included temperature-sensitive mechanisms. When heated by a candle, air pressure shifted internal weights, causing the figure to move. These weren't just party tricks, they were early experiments in artificial responsiveness, blurring the line between tool and autonomous machine. Perhaps the most haunting creation was the automatic owl, a mechanical bird described in texts from the Ptolemaic period. Designed to sit among living birds, it would suddenly flap its wings and hoot when triggered, startling the real animals into flight, an ancient predecessor to modern animatronics. But why create such devices? Beyond spectacle, these machines held deeper significance. They embodied the Greek obsession with mimesis, the imitation of nature, as a path to understanding the cosmos. By replicating life mechanically, philosophers like Hero hinted at a radical idea, that the universe itself might operate like a vast, self-regulating machine. The sophistication didn't end there. Ancient engineers built automated temple doors that appeared to open by divine will. Using steam power or hidden counterweights, these doors swung apart when priests lit altar fires, creating the illusion of supernatural intervention. One temple in Alexandria reportedly had doors that groaned like living beings as they moved, adding to the theatrical awe. Such inventions weren't merely practical. They were psychological tools, reinforcing belief through engineered miracles. Yet for all their brilliance, these technologies vanished for centuries. The fall of Hellenistic libraries and shifting cultural priorities buried their blueprints. What survived in fragmented texts suggests a staggering loss and alternate technological trajectory that might have accelerated innovation by millennia. Modern reconstructions, like the Antikythera Mechanism's decoding, prove these devices weren't myth. When researchers rebuilt Hero's automated theater using his instructions, every movement aligned perfectly with his descriptions, silencing skeptics who dismissed ancient robotics as exaggeration. So why does this matter today? Beyond rewriting the timeline of invention, these machines reveal a core truth about the ancient Greek mind, their fearless blending of art, science, and theater. They didn't just build tools, they crafted experiences that challenged reality itself. Next time you see a modern robot, remember, its ancestors might have been applauded in an Athenian theater 2,000 years ago. And speaking of rewriting history, our next secret plunges into the shadows of ancient scholarship, where even Plato's most famous works were just the tip of the philosophical iceberg. Now, let's unravel a mystery that has puzzled historians for centuries, the final resting place of one of history's greatest minds, Aristotle. Despite shaping Western philosophy, science, and logic, the location of his tomb remains one of antiquity's most frustrating enigmas. How could the man who tutored Alexander the Great, whose works became the foundation of medieval universities, vanish so completely from the archaeological record? The search begins with Aristotle's final years. After Alexander's death in 323 before the Common Era, anti-Macedonian sentiment forced Aristotle to flee Athens, fearing the same fate as Socrates. He retreated to Chalcis on the island of Euboea, where he died just a year later at age 62. Ancient texts mention his burial there, but specifics are maddeningly vague. Some accounts suggest his ashes were later returned to his hometown of Stagira in northern Greece, a place he'd helped rebuild after Philip II razed it. Yet no tomb was ever officially recorded, and Stagira's ruins have yielded no definitive clues. For decades, archaeologists scoured Chalcis and Stagira in vain. The breakthrough came in 1996, when a team excavating Stagira's ancient agora uncovered a marble-floored structure with an altar, consistent with a heroine, a shrine for honoring notable figures. Nearby, they found ceramics from Aristotle's era and a silver coin depicting Alexander, tantalizing hints but no smoking gun. Then, in 2016, a flashier claim emerged. At a conference in Thessaloniki, archaeologist Kostas Sismonides announced he'd found Aristotle's tomb in the same Stagira excavation. His evidence, a rectangular building with a domed roof, its floor dating to Aristotle's lifetime, containing an altar and what appeared to be an ash receptacle. The site's prominence overlooking the city matched the philosopher's status, and its destruction layer aligned with Slavic invasions centuries later. But skepticism persists. No inscriptions directly link the tomb to Aristotle, and heroines were common for local luminaries. Critics argue his fame would have warranted a grander memorial, like Plato's known grave in Athens. Others propose his tomb lies in Athens' Lyceum, where he taught, though extensive excavations there found nothing. The most poetic theory comes from a medieval Arab scholar who claimed Aristotle wished to be buried with his wife Pythias, whose tomb also vanished. Why does this mystery endure? Unlike Alexander, whose lost tomb became a political symbol, Aristotle's disappearance reflects his complicated legacy. His works were nearly lost when Rome sacked Athens, only preserved by Arab and Byzantine scholars. His tomb's obscurity mirrors how his ideas were often debated in shadows, celebrated by medieval theologians, suppressed during the Renaissance, then revived as science advanced. Recent technology might finally solve this. Ground-penetrating radar in Stagira has revealed unexplored chambers beneath Sismonides' site. Meanwhile, isotopic analysis of ash samples could trace their origin to Chalcis. Every clue brings us closer to answering why the man who classified knowledge couldn't be classified by his own burial. As we piece together these fragments, another secret waits, one hidden in plain sight on the Parthenon's gleaming surface where first impressions deceive. Turning now from lost tombs to visible monuments, we encounter a secret hiding in plain sight on one of Greece's most iconic structures. The Parthenon, that gleaming white symbol of classical perfection, wasn't always the monochrome masterpiece we see today. Modern eyes have been deceived. What appears as pristine marble was once a riot of color, with statues and friezes painted in bold blues, radiant reds, and gilded gold. For centuries, Renaissance artists and neoclassical architects idolized the pure white aesthetic, believing it represented Greek ideals of harmony and simplicity. Even early archaeologists dismissed ancient accounts of painted temples as exaggerations. The truth began emerging in the 1800s when researchers noticed tiny pigment flecks clinging to sheltered crevices. But the real breakthrough came with ultraviolet photography in the 1980s, revealing ghostly patterns invisible to the naked eye: painted eyelashes on statues, intricate embroidered details on robes, even illusionary shadows that made carvings appear three-dimensional. The colors weren't just decorative, they carried meaning. Analysis shows Greeks used expensive pigments like Egyptian blue, made from ground lapis lazuli for deities' robes, signaling divinity, while mortal figures wore cheaper ochres. Trace elements of cinnabar, a mercury-based red imported from Spain, adorned helmet plumes on friezes depicting battles. Most surprising were the backgrounds. Metopes that now appear blank were once vivid crimson or azure, making the sculptures pop like modern graphic novels. Even the building itself wasn't spared. Columns had subtly tinted capitals to enhance their proportions when viewed from below. Why did this polychromy vanish? Time and chemistry played equal parts. Organic binders like egg tempera decayed, leaving pigments vulnerable to rain and pollution. The real death blow came from 19th century restorers who scrubbed remaining paint, believing they were revealing the Greeks' true vision. Ironically, the Parthenon's survival as a ruin preserved more color traces than better preserved Roman copies, where overcleaning erased the evidence. Today, digital reconstructions let us see the Parthenon as ancient Athenians did. A statue of Aphrodite might have had golden hair and pearl-encrusted earrings, her peplos dress patterned with saffron yellow waves. The West Pediments contest between Athena and Poseidon. Imagine Poseidon's sea blue cloak contrasting with Athena's olive green aegis, their chariots gleaming with bronze accents. This wasn't gaudiness. The Greeks understood how sunlight interacted with pigments at different times of day, using color to guide pilgrims' eyes toward sacred narratives. The implications rewrite art history. Those stark white Roman copies that inspired Michelangelo were poor imitations of Greece's vibrant originals. Even the term classical needs redefining. What we consider serene minimalism was actually dynamic and immersive. Next time you see a marble statue, picture it not as pale perfection, but as a fragment of a world that loved color as much as form. As these revelations reshape our view of Greek art, another technological marvel awaits, one that proves ancient inventors were centuries ahead of their time. Moving from the vibrant colors of the Parthenon to the dazzling excesses of ancient Greek life, we arrive at a city so synonymous with luxury that its very name became a byword for indulgence: Sybaris. This wealthy Greek colony in southern Italy took pleasure to such extremes that its citizens lived by rules as extravagant as they were bizarre. Imagine a place where roosters were outlawed for crowing too early, where chefs competed in gourmet Olympics, and where beds were considered too hard unless layered with rose petals. This wasn't just wealth, it was a culture that turned daily life into a performance of opulence. Sybaris thrived in the 6th century before the Common Era, built on fertile land that made its residents staggeringly rich through trade and agriculture. But what set them apart wasn't just their wealth, it was how aggressively they flaunted it. Their obsession with comfort reached such heights that they allegedly banned blacksmiths and carpenters from working inside city limits, declaring the noise an unacceptable disturbance. Even the clatter of pottery was outlawed at night. Citizens demanded absolute silence, leading to what might be history's first noise pollution laws. Their feasts became legendary. Sybarite chefs weren't just cooks, they were celebrities, competing in culinary contests judged with the same reverence as Olympic athletes. One dish, a stuffed river eel wrapped in saffron-infused dough, was said to have won its creator a lifetime pension. Another chef reportedly invented a way to pipe different sauces directly onto plates through a system of tubes, an ancient precursor to molecular gastronomy. These weren't just meals, they were edible theater designed to astonish as much as to satisfy hunger. Even their pets lived better than most Greeks. A famous tale tells of a Sybarite who taught his horse to dance to flute music, then paraded it through the streets draped in gold trappings. When the horse later stumbled in battle, distracted by an enemy's flute, the entire city allegedly outlawed flutes in military camps. Then there's the story of the citizen who, after injuring his back while digging, decreed that all spades should be padded with wool. Whether fact or exaggeration, these anecdotes reveal a culture that considered discomfort a personal affront. But Sybaris' greatest innovation might have been the world's first patent law. According to historian Athenaeus, if a chef invented a particularly delicious dish, no rival could copy the recipe for an entire year, giving the creator exclusive rights to profit from their creation. This startlingly modern concept highlights how Sybaris blended creativity with commerce, turning indulgence into an industry. Why did such a prosperous city vanish? The answer is as dramatic as its lifestyle. In 510 before the Common Era, a neighboring rival, Croton, grew envious of Sybarite wealth. In a shocking act of retribution, Croton's army diverted the river Crathis to flood Sybaris, drowning the city in luxury's literal excess. Survivors fled, but the legacy lived on. Greek playwrights used Sybaris as a cautionary tale about decadence, while modern languages still use Sybaritic to describe lavish living. Archaeology confirms parts of the legend. Excavations reveal elaborate drainage systems for sumptuous baths, mosaic floors depicting banquet scenes, and fragments of delicate glassware imported from Egypt. Far from mere hedonists, the Sybarites were pioneers of comfort culture, proving that even 500 years before the Common Era, people understood luxury as both art and science. Their ghost lingers today, not just in the word Sybaritic, but in every time we choose a softer mattress or savor a perfectly plated meal. As we leave this city of vanished splendor, another mystery surfaces, one locked in undeciphered symbols on ancient clay tablets. Now, shifting from tales of opulence to the silent enigma of forgotten symbols, we uncover one of history's most enduring linguistic puzzles, Linear A. Unlike the lavish excesses of Sybaris, this mystery isn't written in gold or carved into marble. It's pressed into humble clay tablets, waiting centuries for someone to whisper their secrets. Discovered in the ruins of Knossos and other Minoan sites on Crete, Linear dates back to around 1800 before the Common Era, predating even the earliest Greek dialects. Its elegant, curving symbols, over 100 distinct characters, were used for accounting, trade, and likely sacred texts. But despite a century of study, no one alive today can read them. Why? Because the language it records isn't Greek. It's something entirely different, a lost tongue spoken by the Minoans, Europe's first advanced civilization. Here's what makes Linear so tantalizing. While its successor, Linear B, was cracked in 1952 by Michael Ventris, revealing an early form of Greek, Linear A resists all decoding. The symbols resemble Linear B's, but the words they form belong to an unknown linguistic family. Some scholars hear echoes of Anatolian languages like Luwian, spoken in ancient Turkey. Others detect Semitic roots, linking it to Near Eastern traders. A bold few even suggest it's a linguistic isolate, a language with no living relatives. Without a bilingual text, a Rosetta Stone for the Minoans, the truth remains locked away. The content of these tablets adds to the intrigue. Most are inventories, lists of grain, oil, and textiles, hinting at a sophisticated bureaucracy. Yet some bear cryptic phrases beside symbols of double axes and goddesses, likely religious in nature. One recurring sign, a figure with raised arms, appears at temple sites, possibly denoting offerings or prayers. But without understanding the words, we're left guessing at the rituals that once animated Minoan palaces. Geographical clues deepen the mystery. Linear tablets pop up not just on Crete but also on islands like Thera and Key, proving the Minoans' far-reaching trade networks. Oddly, a handful surfaced in Israel, suggesting these seafaring people may have influenced or been influenced by distant cultures. Even more puzzling, artifacts with similar symbols found in Sardinia hint at a possible Mediterranean-wide script, though no one knows for sure. Theories abound. Was Linear a purely administrative, or did it also record literature and laws? Did it die with the Minoan civilization around 1450 before the Common Era, when Mycenaean Greeks took over Crete and adapted the script into Linear B? Or did it survive orally, its words echoing in later myths? The answers might lie in unexcavated archives or undiscovered shipwrecks. Modern technology offers glimmers of hope. AI algorithms are testing pattern recognition techniques, while spectral imaging reveals faded symbols on reused tablets. Still, the key may require something older, a lucky find in some dusty storeroom or a fresh dig in Crete's labyrinthine ruins. Until then, Linear remains a silent witness to a world that shaped Greece before the Greeks even arrived. As we ponder these ghostly symbols, another ancient marvel calls, one that proves the Greeks didn't just inherit mysteries but created their own. Turning from silent scripts to living revolutions, we arrive at one of history's quietest uprisings, one fought not with swords but with social change. Spartan women didn't just break the mold of ancient Greece, they shattered it. While Athenian women lived secluded lives, spinning wool and managing households, Spartan women were landowners, athletes, and even political influencers. This wasn't just unusual, it was scandalous enough that other Greek writers called them bare-thighed and domineering, their freedoms viewed as a threat to the natural order. Why such radical differences? Sparta's militaristic society held a singular focus, producing elite warriors. With men constantly training or at war, women took on responsibilities unimaginable elsewhere. They inherited land, controlled up to 40% of Sparta's territory by the 4th century before the Common Era, and managed estates while their husbands were away. Unlike other Greek women who married as young as 14, Spartan women wed in their late teens, ensuring physical maturity for childbirth. Their education included running, wrestling, and even javelin throwing, not for battle but to bear strong sons. A famous saying captured this ethos. Spartan mothers told their sons to return from war with your shield or on it, victorious or dead. The gymnasiums where women trained scandalized visitors. Athenian playwrights mocked Spartan girls for exercising nude alongside boys, though modern scholars debate whether this was literal or exaggerated satire. What's certain is their public visibility, unheard of elsewhere. Fragments of poetry by Spartan women like Megalostrata survive, hinting at intellectual pursuits beyond domestic duties. Even in marriage, Spartans flouted norms. Husbands would sneak into their wives' homes at night, maintaining separate households long after wedding ceremonies. This autonomy had consequences. Aristotle later blamed Sparta's decline on its women, arguing their economic power created a society obsessed with wealth over military virtue. He wasn't entirely wrong. By the late 4th century, a handful of women like Queen Siniska, who bred Olympic-winning chariot teams, amassed fortunes that dwarfed most men's. Yet Sparta's rigid system also sowed its own downfall. With land concentrated in female hands, many men couldn't meet property requirements for citizenship, shrinking the warrior class. The most startling rebellion, though, was ideological. Spartan women were known to shame men into bravery. When one mother handed her son a shield before battle, she reportedly said, "Come back with it or on it." Another, hearing her son had fled, allegedly killed him herself, declaring, "He was not my offspring." These stories, possibly embellished, reveal a society where women enforced militaristic values as fiercely as men. Archaeology supports their unconventional role. Votive offerings at Spartan shrines include figurines of women in athletic poses, while grave inscriptions celebrate female lineage, rare in Greece where men dominated family records. Even in death, Spartan women were equals. Their tombstones, unlike the anonymous markers of Athenian women, bore names and achievements, yet this equality had limits. Women couldn't vote in the assembly, and their freedoms existed solely to serve Sparta's military machine. Their legacy remains contradictory, both empowered and instrumentalized. As Sparta faded, other Greeks pointed to its women as cautionary tales. But perhaps the real lesson is subtler. A society that redefined gender roles ultimately couldn't sustain its own contradictions. As we leave Sparta's paradoxes behind, another marvel awaits, one hidden not in laws or legends, but in the flickering flames of ancient temples. Now, as we navigate from Sparta's warrior women to the realm of divine desire, let's uncover one of ancient Greece's most whispered about mysteries, the Temple of Aphrodite in Corinth. This wasn't just a place of worship, it was entwined with legends of sacred intimacy, where myth and reality blur like the haze over the Aegean at dawn. Corinth, a bustling trade hub, thrived on commerce, and not just in goods. The city's reputation for sensual indulgence was so notorious that, to Corinthianize, became slang for living a life of luxury and pleasure. At the heart of this stood the Temple of Aphrodite, perched high on the Acrocorinth, where ancient writers like Strabo claimed 1,000 sacred courtesans served the goddess of love. But how much of this was fact, and how much was sensational gossip from rival cities? Archaeology tells a more nuanced story. Excavations reveal the temple was indeed grand, but evidence of mass sacred prostitution is scant. No records list names or payments, no dormitories house 1,000 women. Instead, we find smaller sanctuaries dedicated to Aphrodite across Greece, where ritual sexuality likely played a limited symbolic role. For instance, at her festivals, sacred rites might have included acts celebrating fertility, common in many ancient religions, but not the commercialized brothel later imaginations conjured. What's undeniable is that Corinth's real courtesans, known as hetairai, wielded surprising influence. Unlike ordinary prostitutes, these educated women attended symposia, debated philosophy, and formed relationships with powerful men. The famous Hetaira Neaera, whose court case survives in speeches, even owned property, a rarity for women. Could some have had ties to Aphrodite's temple? Possibly, but as independent entrepreneurs, not temple slaves. The myth's persistence reveals more about ancient attitudes than historical truth. Athens, Corinth's rival, painted the city as morally lax to elevate its own image. Even early Christian writers latched onto the tale, using it to condemn pagan immorality. Yet modern scholars note how often sacred prostitution claims surface in cultures outsiders wanted to vilify, from Babylon to Carthage. One fascinating artifact bridges myth and reality: terracotta figurines of nude women found near the temple, often holding their breasts or genitals. These weren't erotic toys but votive offerings, L-I-K-E-L-Y, Chinese letter fertility or protection in childbirth. Similarly, inscriptions speak of Aphrodite Melanes, a darker aspect of the goddess linked to death and rebirth, hinting at rituals far deeper than mere titillation. The temple's true power lay in its duality. Aphrodite wasn't just about physical love. She governed cosmic harmony, sea travel, and even political alliances. Sailors prayed to her before voyages, and Corinth's wealth flowed from its ports. By tying commerce to her worship, the city cleverly sanctified its practical pursuits. So why did the thousand courtesans legend endure? Perhaps because it encapsulates Greece's uneasy relationship with female sexuality, both revering and fearing it. Unlike Sparta's athletic women, Corinth's supposed priestesses symbolized allure as both divine and dangerous. In the end, the temple's real secret isn't about bodies for hire, but how societies project their anxieties onto the sacred. As we step away from Corinth's shadowed colonnades, another enigma calls one etched not in clay, but in fire and prophecy. Leaving behind the whispers of Corinth's sacred rites, we turn to a different kind of loss, one that echoes through the empty spaces of literary history. Imagine a library filled with 90 masterpieces, only to have all but 7 vanish into dust. This isn't fiction. It's the haunting reality of Aeschylus, the father of Greek tragedy, whose groundbreaking works were either lost to time or perhaps deliberately erased. Aeschylus didn't just write plays, he invented the very structure of drama as we know it. Before him, performances were chaotic choruses. He introduced the second actor, creating dialogue and conflict, the heartbeat of theater. Of his 90 works, only 7 survive intact, the rest fragments, titles, or whispers in ancient commentaries, but even these scraps hint at something explosive. Take The Suppliants, one of the surviving plays. It centers on 50 women defying a tyrannical king, a daring theme for 5th century BC Athens. Or consider the lost Prometheus Unbound, where the rebellious Titan prophesies the downfall of Zeus himself. These weren't just myths, they were political grenades. Aeschylus lived through Athens' transformation from tyranny to democracy, and his plays often questioned power. Why did so much disappear? Fires and decay claim many ancient texts, but censorship likely played a role. After his death, Athens celebrated Aeschylus with rare honor, reviving his works by official decree. Yet later generations, particularly under conservative rulers, might have found his ideas too dangerous. The lost Glaucus of Potney, for instance, reportedly exposed corruption in athletic competitions, a sacred Greek institution. The fragments we have are tantalizing. A single line from the Lost Myrmidons, "You kiss not with your heart but with your lips," hints at a charged relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, far bolder than later sanitized versions. Another, from the Net Draggers, describes fishermen as free men starving in a land of plenty, a radical class critique. Even the surviving plays bear scars of suppression. The Eumenides, which concludes the Orsteia trilogy, celebrates Athena establishing Athens' first courtroom. But scholars note how it glosses over her controversial decision to side with patriarchal law over maternal rights, a tension Aeschylus might have explored more critically in earlier drafts. The greatest loss, his Persian sequel. The Surviving Persians glorifies Athens' victory at Salamis, where Aeschylus fought. But ancient sources mention a follow-up where Xerxes' mother, Atossa, confronts the human cost of war. If found, it could rewrite our view of Greek propaganda. Modern technology offers slim hope. Multispectral imaging has recovered erased texts from palimpsests, and libraries still hold unidentified papyri. A single discovery could reshape literary history. Until then, Aeschylus' lost plays remind us that the past isn't just what survives. It's also the gaps, the silenced voices, the burned scrolls, and the stories someone didn't want us to hear. As we close this chapter on missing masterpieces, another fragment of Greek genius calls one not written in ink, but in honey and hallucination. Shifting from lost plays to altered states, let's uncover a potent secret the ancient Greeks didn't hide: their sophisticated use of mind-bending substances. Far from the sober philosophers we imagine, their world pulsed with opium-laced rituals, hallucinogenic brews, and even a honey so dangerous it could kill or enlighten. Start with the Eleusinian Mysteries, where initiates drank kykeon, a barley potion modern scientists believe contained ergot fungus, a natural source of LSD-like compounds. This wasn't recreational, it was sacred chemistry. Participants described transcendent visions of the afterlife, suggesting the brew-induced controlled psychedelic trips to simulate death and rebirth. The secret was so guarded that leaking it meant execution. Then there's opium, harvested from Thessaly's poppy fields. Hippocrates prescribed it for insomnia and pain, but temple priests used it deeper. At the Oracle of Delphi, ethylene gas might have fueled the Pythia's trances, but opium residue on ritual vessels hints at a backup plan for days the earth didn't exhale enough vapor. Soldiers carried it too. Alexander's troops encountered meconium, opium gum in Persia, blending it into wine for courage and oblivion, but the most bizarre high. Mad honey from Turkey's Black Sea coast, where rhododendron nectar granotoxins caused hallucinations, paralysis, or worse. Greek texts describe invading armies collapsing after raiding local hives. Yet deliberately microdosed, it became a shamanic tool. The pharmakoi ritual scapegoats may have ingested it to enter trances before being exiled, taking the city's sins with them. Even wine wasn't just wine. Greeks mixed it with pine resin, seawater, or hallucinogenic herbs like belladonna, creating cocktails that blurred the line between celebration and sacrament. Dionysian festivals turned into ecstatic rites where worshippers, fueled by these brews, tore animals apart raw, believing they channeled the god himself. Medical texts reveal precision in dosing. The physician Dioscorides catalogued opium's risks: addiction, overdose, the sleep from which one does not wake. Yet he also praised its power to quiet the tempest of the mind. This duality, sacred and dangerous, mirrored their view of altered states, a bridge to the divine, but only for those who knew how to cross safely. Modern archaeology confirms what texts hint at. Chemical analysis of Mycenaean cups found traces of opium alkaloids. A Cretan priestess's tomb contained a necklace of opium poppy pods, arranged like a warning and a promise. Even the word pharmacy comes from pharmakon Greek for both remedy and poison. The lesson: ancient Greece wasn't just reason and rhetoric. It was a civilization that explored the mind's frontiers with every tool available: vapor, vine, and venom. Some secrets weren't lost, they were metabolized, leaving echoes in our own debates about drugs, healing, and who gets to control the boundaries of consciousness. As we sober up from this revelation, another Greek marvel demands attention, not from a temple or battlefield, but from the stars themselves. Turning our gaze from altered minds to precise calculations, we encounter yet another marvel of Greek ingenuity: the Olympia computer. While the Antikythera Mechanism steals the spotlight, this lesser-known device, discovered in the ruins of ancient Olympia, proves the Greeks were far more technologically advanced than we ever imagined. Buried for centuries beneath the same soil that once witnessed legendary athletes, this bronze artifact was initially mistaken for a simple gear. But upon closer inspection, researchers realized it was a sophisticated calculator designed to track time, athletic events, and even celestial patterns. Imagine a pocket watch, but one that could predict the best dates for the Olympics based on the stars. The Olympia computer functioned as both a calendar and an astrological guide. Its interlocking gears mirrored the motions of the sun, moon, and planets, allowing priests and officials to schedule games during auspicious cosmic alignments. For the Greeks, timing wasn't just practical, it was sacred. Holding the Olympics under the wrong stars could mean disaster, so this device ensured the gods smiled upon the competitions. Archaeologists believe it may have also been used to train athletes. By tracking planetary cycles, trainers could determine optimal periods for peak performance, blending science with superstition. Some inscriptions suggest it even predicted eclipses, allowing events to be postponed if the skies turned ominous. What makes this discovery groundbreaking is its connection to the Antikythera Mechanism. Both devices shared similar engineering, yet the Olympia computer was smaller, possibly mass-produced for temples and athletic schools. While the Antikythera was a ship's treasure, This was a workhorse proof that Greek clockwork technology wasn't a one-off miracle but part of a broader tradition. Yet, like so many Greek secrets, this knowledge vanished. The Romans, who admired Greek culture, never replicated these devices. Was the craftsmanship too complex? Were the manuals destroyed? Or did the rise of Christianity deem such pagan machinery unnecessary? Whatever the reason, the Olympia computer remains a tantalizing clue to a lost world where science and spirituality were seamlessly entwined. As we marvel at this ancient predecessor to modern computers, we're left wondering what other forgotten inventions still lie buried, waiting to rewrite history. Perhaps the next great discovery is just a dig away. Now, stepping from the realm of astronomical calculators into the shadows of ancient academia, we uncover one of philosophy's best-kept secrets, Plato's whispered teachings. While his written dialogues like the Republic and the Symposium shaped Western thought, historians now believe these were merely the tip of the intellectual iceberg. Behind closed doors at his famed academy, Plato reserved his most radical ideas for a select few, delivered only through spoken words, the so-called unwritten doctrines. Imagine the scene. Beneath the olive trees of Athens, a circle of students leans in as Plato reveals truths too explosive to ink onto parchment. According to accounts from his pupils, these oral teachings delved into metaphysics far bolder than his published works, concepts like the One as the ultimate reality, a primal unity beyond even his theory of forms. Some fragments suggest he described cosmic hierarchies invisible to the senses, with mathematical principles governing the soul's journey. Why the secrecy? Plato himself warned in Phaedrus that writing paralyzes thought, fearing fixed texts would replace true understanding. Even more provocative were his alleged lectures on the philosopher king. While the Republic outlines this ideal ruler, whispers hint that Plato privately taught it wasn't just a metaphor. He supposedly named real candidates, including Dionysius the Younger of Syracuse, sparking theories he was crafting a shadow curriculum to train future leaders. Modern scholars debate whether these oral doctrines contradicted his writings or deepened them. Xenocrates, Plato's successor, referenced higher truths shared only verbally, while Aristotle later critiqued Plato's esoteric numbers as Pythagorean influences gone rogue. The mystery thickens with the Academy's fate. When Rome sacked Athens in 86 BC, the school's archives burned, possibly taking Plato's secret teachings with them. Yet tantalizing clues endure. A 1st century AD papyrus fragment mentions his Lecture on the Good, where he allegedly reduced all philosophy to mathematics, a vision echoing the Antikythera and Olympia devices' cosmic precision. Even early Christians like Clement of Alexandria hinted at hidden Platonic wisdom, calling it a light too bright for the public. What survives suggests Plato's published works were training wheels for initiates. Like a philosopher's version of the Eleusinian mysteries, his academy may have operated on tiers of revelation. This wasn't elitism, it was pedagogy. He demanded students wrestle with contradictions to reach higher truths, a method lost when his dialogues became static scripture. Today, archaeologists scour academy ruins for lost lecture halls, while philosophers mine ancient commentaries for traces of those unwritten words. Some even argue Plato wanted his secrets lost, believing true knowledge lived only in dynamic debate. As we piece together this puzzle, one thing is clear: the man who gave us Socrates' voice may have kept his own most revolutionary thoughts silent. And that raises a thrilling question: if his published works were just the primer, what world-shaking ideas vanished when the last student died? Now, shifting our gaze from the whispered secrets of Plato's academy to the silent symbols etched into ancient clay, we confront a linguistic puzzle that rewrites Greek history, the enigma of Mycenaean writing. For centuries, scholars believed Greek civilization began with Homer's epics around the 8th century BC. But in the early 20th century, archaeologist Arthur Evans unearthed clay tablets at Knossos and Mycenae inscribed with strange, angular markings. These weren't decorative scratches, they were Europe's first writing systems, and they held a bombshell revelation. Greek wasn't a newcomer to the stage of history. It had been spoken and written 500 years earlier than anyone imagined. The breakthrough came with Linear B, the script used by Mycenaean palace bureaucrats around 1400 BC. After decades of failed attempts, architect Michael Ventris cracked the code in 1952, revealing something astonishing. Linear B wasn't some lost pre-Greek language, it was Greek. Those cryptic symbols recorded inventories of chariots, olive oil, and slaves in a dialect remarkably close to Homer's. Suddenly, heroes like Agamemnon weren't just mythic figures. They ruled real kingdoms with sophisticated administrations, their tax records preserved in fire-baked clay. Linear B tablets list places like Knossos and Thebes, proving these cities weren't just Bronze Age legends but thriving capitals. Yet for every answer Linear B provided, it birthed a deeper mystery. Its precursor, Linear A, used by the Minoans of Crete as early as 1800 BC, this older script shares some symbols with Linear B but remains stubbornly undeciphered. Is it an early form of Greek, a lost language like Etruscan, or something even stranger? The theories are as wild as they are divisive. Some linguists propose connections to Anatolian languages spoken in ancient Turkey, while others spot possible links to Semitic tongues from the Near East. A few daring scholars even suggest it encodes a unique Minoan language with no known relatives, a linguistic ghost haunting the Aegean. The stakes are high. Deciphering Linear wouldn't just fill gaps in a grammar textbook, it could rewrite the origins of Western civilization. These tablets predate Plato by over a millennium, yet they might hold traces of the first European bureaucracies, trade networks, or even religious rituals. Some tablets from Akrotiri, preserved by the Thera eruption, show Linear alongside vivid frescoes of saffron gatherers and leaping dolphins. Are these mundane stock lists or sacred texts? Without a Rosetta Stone like bilingual inscription, the symbols keep their silence. Modern technology offers glimmers of hope. AI algorithms now analyze symbol patterns, identifying potential grammatical structures. Archaeologists have pinpointed recurring sequences that might mark verbs or place names. One tantalizing clue: Linear tablets use fraction-like signs absent in Linear B, hinting at advanced mathematics or precise rationing systems. Even the script's direction is debated. Some inscriptions spiral inward like a labyrinth, perhaps mirroring the Minoans' famed palace designs. What makes this puzzle so gripping isn't just the intellectual challenge. It's the realization that beneath the classical Greece we know, the Greece of Socrates and the Parthenon, lies a shadowy, older world. A world where scribes in Knossos tracked shipments of perfumed oil while their counterparts in Mycenae mustered troops, all writing in a script we're only beginning to whisper back to life. Linear B proved Greek civilization didn't spring from nowhere after a dark age. It had deep roots abruptly severed by invasions or disasters around 1200 BC. Linear A, if solved, might reveal what or who came before. So we're left with a tantalizing paradox. The Mycenaeans, whose Linear B tablets first revealed Greek's ancient pedigree, borrowed their writing system from a culture whose language they didn't inherit. Like inheriting a locked chest but losing the key, they adapted Minoan symbols to write their own tongue, leaving us to wonder, what stories, laws, or prayers did the original keyholders inscribe? Until we crack Linear A, Bronze Age Crete remains a civilization speaking in riddles, its most profound thoughts trapped behind a door we've yet to open. And that door might just lead us to the forgotten prologue of everything we call Greek. As we pull back the curtain on these 25 astonishing secrets, one thing becomes undeniably clear: ancient Greece was a civilization of dazzling contradictions and hidden depths. Far from the pristine marble statues and simplified textbook narratives, The reality was a world where priestesses inhaled hallucinogenic vapors to channel the gods, where mathematicians murdered to protect numerical truths, and where robotic theater machines whirred to life 2,000 years before the Industrial Revolution. Think about it, we've explored a Spartan secret police force that murdered slaves under moonlight, a philosopher's academy with doctrines too radical to write down, and a volcano eruption so catastrophic it might have inspired the legend of Atlantis. These aren't footnotes in history, they're proof that ancient Greece thrived on mysteries, innovations, and brutalities we're only beginning to grasp. The Antikythera Mechanism alone rewrites our understanding of ancient technology, while the Eleusinian mysteries reveal how deeply spirituality and mind-altering rituals shaped their worldview. And yet, for every secret uncovered, a dozen more remain buried. What truly happened to Alexander the Great's golden sarcophagus? Why did the Spartans, despite their military perfection, crumble so completely? What sacred knowledge died with the last oracle of Dodona? The haunting truth is this: we've barely scratched the surface. New discoveries emerge yearly. Charred scrolls deciphered by AI, underwater cities revealing lost frescoes, and even fresh clues about Aristotle's elusive tomb. So here's the question that should keep you up at night. If these 25 secrets have reshaped everything you thought you knew about ancient Greece, what earth-shattering truths still lie hidden beneath the Mediterranean soil? Maybe you'll be the one to uncover them. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because history isn't a static relic. It's a living, breathing detective story, and the next chapter is waiting to be found. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never assume the past has given up all its secrets. The Greeks certainly didn't.